In this video, Dr. Jordan Peterson explains why selfishness is necessary and how to have a long-term relationship.
Can we extrapolate this to say that you also can't only care about or rely on yourself because, say, you may fall ill or you may start to grow old, and if the only thing you've ever lived for is yourself, then that'll be kind of hellish?
I think that's exactly the same problem, is that, I know the basic dimensions that you have to fortify. You covered them in the future authoring program, roughly speaking. It's not that difficult to lay them out. And I would sort of think about these as the central elements of human nature in some sense. And one of the things that is worth pointing out, by the way, is that most utopian schemes admit to no human nature, right? Because they posit a certain kind of utopia, define that as perfect, and then imagine that they can build a human being that would fit in that utopia. That's certainly what happened among the Nazis, and also what happened among the radical left-wingers, So they're going to build the new socialist man, and that would be someone who was completely unselfish and devoted towards the state. It's like, well, you don't want to build someone who's completely unselfish. It's a foolish endeavor. It's a hubristic and arrogant endeavor. You have no idea how much selfishness is necessary, but none is certainly the wrong amount. Like I would say, roughly speaking, you should take care of yourself about as well as you take care of someone who's close to you, whose best interests you have at heart. I think you have a moral obligation to do that. It's a basic moral obligation you have to yourself, which is that on average you're as valuable as every other individual is on average. And you may have some elements that are particularly virtuous and some elements that are particularly, weak and contemptible, and those should be uplifted and dealt with, but you don't have any right to hurt yourself. And you don't have any right not to take care of yourself, and part of the reason is exactly that. It's like, you have to distribute yourself out so that you're also not a burden. And being overly selfish is certainly one way to do yourself in. And it's also this sort of thing that's never discussed seriously in the modern world in relationship to such things as marriage. Because we're very, very immature in our conscious morality. So you might think, well, why get married? This is a question that Jung attempted to address, for example. What's the purpose in marriage? Well, the standard routine is that of a 14-year-old girl who still believes in unicorns. It's, well, you find the love of your life, and then fundamentally the arrangement is flowers and magic for the rest of your life. It's you live happily ever after, and there's something to that on the mythological plane, but you got to think that's not a philosophy of intimate relationship. It's so naive and undeveloped that it's embarrassing. So with regards to marriage, I can tell you some things I know about with regards to keeping a long-term intimate relationship together. One is, you can't lie to your partner. And they can't lie to you. And the reason for that is that if you don't know what's going on, you can't adapt to it. So if the person's lying to you, or you're lying to them, neither of you are there. So you're not going to be able to get anywhere with that, because, if someone tells you that the truck is broken down when the car isn't working, and you go out to fix the truck, that's hardly going to get the car going. So, one of the things we tried to impress on our children when they were growing up, to some children always experiment with lying, was that if you lie to me, I can't help you. Because I don't know what the hell's going on. So how the hell can I help you if I don't know what's going on? And, people like Carl Rogers, and this is certainly echoed in the psychoanalytic community at large, is that Rogers in particular said the precondition for a therapeutic relationship is that the people agree to tell each other the truth. Now Jung took that a step farther, which I think is absolutely brilliant, and it's a measure of his humility and genius that he was able to formulate this idea. He said that in order to tell someone the truth, you have to tie them to you so they can't run away, and vice versa. And that's the purpose of the marriage bond from the perspective of psychological development. It's like, we all have a monster. We all are monsters. And if the person with whom you're communicating can run away, there's no way you're ever going to show them what sort of monster you are, and then there's no way you're ever going to learn what sort of monster you are, and there's no way you're going to know how to control it. You know, and so part of what's kept me on the straight and narrow, insofar as that's been possible during my marriage, is that I know that I'm not getting rid of this woman. And so if I don't solve the damn problem, I'm going to be living it out painfully, daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly for the rest of my life. It's like, and then you have to imagine that. It's like, no way, man, I'm going to have this out here, right here and now, because the alternative is I'm going to have this problem forever, and so is she. And the corollary of that is that if I'm having a problem with her, I'm also, despite my own desire, open to the possibility that it's my stupidity that's causing it. It's not like I'm just going to roll over and admit it, because I tend to think I'm right. But I do allow for the possibility that I might be wrong, and so if she can convince me that I'm wrong, and sometimes I help her make the arguments, then I want to find out, because I also don't want to have the problem every day for the next bloody 50 years if it happens to be my stupidity that's causing it. And so it's terror and humility that lead me to attempt to find out where I'm wrong. It's not because I'm a good person. I wouldn't say that. It's because I know enough to know that if I'm blind in some area, I'm going to get hit by the thing I'm blind about over and over, and I don't want that. That's partly why I had you guys imagine your catastrophic future. It's like, you need to know where you don't want to go. I also think that's why part of the reason why cultures have always posited heaven and hell, or at least heaven and the underworld, because those are real places. Now, what they have to do, what their reality is metaphysically, it's like God only knows, literally. But as actual places that you could inhabit, it's like they're there. You just have to wake up and look to see that. Lots of people live in hell, you know, and some of them are so deeply embedded. I like to think of hell as the worst suburb of the underworld. And that's the part where you go into chaos, and that's the underworld, and then the chaos embitters you, and you sink deeper and deeper, and when you've got to the spot that's so deep that you can't get out, then you're in hell. And people are there all the time, because their lives are so surrounded by chaos that they can't fix them. And that's really, you do not want to be there. So Jung's proposition with marriage was, well, there was a variety of them, and they're very, very intelligent. You know, he said, for example, that the reason that you ally yourself with someone is because the probability that your faults and your virtues won't line up is quite high. Just like, you know, your children aren't going to get a disease that requires 2 diseased genes, generally, because the probability that you'll be a carrier of a particular mutation and that your partner will be at the same time is quite low. It's part of the reason why there is sexual reproduction. So your errors and your partner's errors aren't going to match up, and so their strengths will cover your weaknesses. That occurs at a genetic level, but it also occurs at the level of information exchange.